Welcome to Below the Line with Dr. Bennie L. Harris. The Chancellor of the University of South Carolina Upstate talks with top leaders about issues such as change, technology, education, and leadership. Please enjoy.
Welcome to Below the Line. It's a monthly conversation that I have with an outstanding leader. We discuss things like change, technology, education, leadership. And this month, I am excited to be interviewing Dr. Jeffrey Perez. He's the new president and executive director of the South Carolina Commission on Higher Education. Jeff, how are you doing today?
Thanks, Benny. Thanks so much for taking time to spend with me here today. I am so excited to be part of this organization that's so important to the future of South Carolina. I just had an all-staff meeting a couple of days ago, and I said, we are in the future business. How we prepare students, support the campuses in their work so that every citizen possible in South Carolina can prepare for the brightest future for themselves. And by doing so collectively, we really power South Carolina.
Thank you. Jeff, I'm looking forward to even talking more about your vision for CHE. But before we get started, I want to start talking about the beginning, talk about where you grew up, how you first became interested in the field of higher education.
People say that I still haven't lost my New York accent.
Okay.
I grew up on Long Island in New York. When I was growing up, I always was interested in why things happened. Mm-hmm. When we'd go on vacation to upstate New York, and we'd be going through a small town that to me was in the middle of nowhere, I always wanted to know, why was that town there? Why pick that spot? That always drove me, and that drove me to an interest in history. Okay. And after high school, I went to college and studied history. I went to Georgetown undergraduate, and really was driven to answer that question, why things happen. Mm-hmm. And from there, got the degree, and I continued to pursue history and went to Binghamton University in New York for my master's degree.
What was your master's degree in?
In American history.
In American history. Okay. So that's the next question I have, is really talk about your college life experience. And did you find yourself thinking about how you would change or reinforce things in that field of history? Or?
Yeah, when I was at Binghamton, I saw an opportunity to become a fellow in the New York State Senate, which was a program for graduate students. And that really had a powerful impact on my career, my life, because I went from asking why things happen to working in the legislature and asking the questions, how do we make things happen?
Okay.
And that was a really eye-opening experience for me. And it continued to drive my interest in history. I did that for a few years, and then I went on for my doctorate at William and Mary, and I really studied what vision the revolutionary generation had in Virginia for the growth of the state, and then how they went about doing it.
And that's actually an excellent framework for leadership, particularly in higher education and here in South Carolina, as I think about the 3 years I've been here. And what I've learned in terms of not just why things happen, but how do leaders make things happen. We're going to talk more about that.
Sure.
Jeff, you accumulated about 25 years of experience in higher education, with 16 years of those experiences in South Carolina. What have you learned on your work in other states that you think you'll be able to apply here in South Carolina?
Yeah, I've had a really interesting career in that it hasn't been what you'd call a straight line. People go for their doctorate, they become professors, deans, campus presidents maybe. I was pursuing my doctorate, didn't have it in hand yet, still working on the dissertation, but I came back to Albany and I became head of research for the School Boards Association in New York. And then I worked for SUNY, the State University of New York, which is 64 campuses at the time, 400,000 students. Yeah. And I was working for the chancellor and the board of trustees. So I was at the top of a huge university system. But I went from there to working at Shawnee State University, a small public school in Appalachian, Ohio, in the very southern tip of Ohio. So I had the experience of seeing policy made at the very highest levels and then seeing the impact that a college education can make on a first-generation college student from a family of very modest means, and how important and that college degree could be for them. And that really inspired me to want to make sure that we can provide that opportunity for just as many people as possible.
You know, that's interesting, coming from a very large system to a small university. How do you translate for that small university what's possible? Because at that chancellor level, at the system level, you were able to see a lot of what took place, a lot of how things worked and
exactly
how it affected the institution. Now, yet you had a small institution. How were you able to help translate that for them?
You know, it's interesting. A friend of mine said, when I was thinking about this, in terms of being at SUNY, he said, "You've been at the Vatican, now you need your own parish." Uh-huh. And being at a small campus was my own parish.
Okay.
And understanding how systems work made it a lot easier for me to take that experience even to a campus, and then working with other campuses within Ohio in terms of advocacy to make sure that we had the most support possible for our institutions.
Okay. So as president and chief executive of the South Carolina Independent Colleges and Universities, for a period of time, I lived at Lipscomb University. I worked in Nashville, lived at Lipscomb University. We were part of the independent college and university system there in Tennessee. So I got a chance to work and understand and liaison.
Did you know Claude?
I know Claude very well. Claude and I had several conversations. Matter of fact, I saw Claude probably less than a year ago when I went to visit and look at Nashville in a different capacity. But in this role in South Carolina Independent Colleges and University, you oversaw advocacy, fundraising, campus support initiatives on behalf of 21 member institutions and 36,000 students. So what were some of the challenges you faced in that position and the challenges that independent colleges and universities face?
The challenge we all faced back a few years ago was the pandemic.
Right.
And helping ensure that the member institutions got all the support possible from here in the state. At the federal level, that was a challenge at times to make sure we were part of that funding.
Right.
But what we really ramped up at SCICU during that time was collaboration.
Okay.
Bringing the presidents together. Before I started, the presidents only got together a couple of times a year. When you're in the heat of the battle, the pandemic, for a while we were meeting every week.
Yeah.
Then we've cycled it down since then, but they still get together every month. And the presidents really appreciated that opportunity to collaborate, to hear from each other, to learn from one another. That was really rewarding for me, because I had a couple of presidents say that without SCICU, they didn't think they would have made it through the pandemic.
You know, I think that's important because, even though I work and lead a public university now, I'm on the board of trustees of a private university, Lipscomb still. And the challenges we have in navigating the higher education landscape are sometimes a little different than the challenges that are being experienced at public universities. Where are the overlaps between private institutions and public institutions?
And this goes back, by the way, we didn't talk about that here in South Carolina. We will maybe a little later, but I worked at the Citadel and I worked at Winthrop. And what I saw in our discussing the challenges that we face, particularly financial, was that public institutions were embracing more and more what we might call a private college model, which was not relying as much on the state because of limited resources. Focus on enrollment, focus on fundraising, and focus on auxiliary services. So those are priorities that both private colleges and public colleges now have.
Okay. Yes, and I can see that. I can see that private colleges are very dependent upon enrollment, so that's the primary revenue source.
Absolutely.
Now, while there at the Citadel, you helped the institution to achieve record enrollment and its highest annual giving in its history. Tell me about that and the team, and how did you and the team there accomplish that?
Sure. I was the vice president for external affairs, which is communications and marketing. So I like to say when you're in communications at a campus, it's like a bugle and you're the horn. You're not necessarily making the music, but you're making it sound a little better and a little louder.
Yes.
And that's what we were doing. We were helping to articulate the message about our fundraising and about the great education that the Citadel offers, and making sure that message was reached by as wide an audience as possible. And there was such great news. You know, Citadel does, for many years now, done really well in U.S. news. So we wanted to articulate that. But, you just never know. One thing that my office put out was the magazine, and we took great pride in that, put a lot of work into it, and it came out several times a year. Well, there was an alumni, we found out, who had lost touch with the campus, and somehow he got back on the mailing list, and he got that magazine, and he was so inspired by what he saw that he got back in touch with the college and ended up being a very significant donor.
Wow. Yeah. And it happens that way.
Yep.
It happens. Communication is so critical for that. While you at SUNY State University in Ohio, you worked as the Director of Communication and Government Affairs, rebuilding the public relations operation while serving as the Secretary of the Board of Trustees. While there, you secured the first federal funding in the university's history. Can you tell me about that experience and what it taught you, and taught you about higher education as well?
Yeah. It's, you can talk about institutional advancement. And when people use that term, typically they think about it as fundraising.
Right.
But it's a matter of how you define fundraising and the support you get and how you secure it. You can call South Carolina biggest donor to higher education in South Carolina. And it's a matter of in fundraising and advancement, as you know, sharing a vision and getting people excited about it and getting them want to invest in it.
Right.
At Shawnee State, we were building up our digital simulation and gaming program.
Okay.
And we went to the Congresswoman at the time, Jean Schmidt, and showed her what we were trying to accomplish. What we really needed to move the programs forward was an immersive digital lab.
Okay.
And that's one of the, you see the people with the ping pong balls on them and getting filmed. We wanted one of those for the campus. And she was excited by that, and she helped us secure that funding for that lab. And now, today, Shawnee State, again, a small public college in Appalachian, Ohio, has one of the top digital gaming and simulation programs in the country.
And that's amazing. We would think about, I'm in higher education, probably have a similar type of career path as you, not from the traditional faculty, dean, provost rank, but looking at external affairs and how do you advance an institution. And it's not just philanthropy, but how to use other ways, whether it's industry partnerships or federal partnerships to advance and elevate that particular institution. And we're going to have to do more of that because as we look at state funding and state revenue, as we look at other enrollment, the enrollment cliff, and all those types of things.
I'll tell you a quick story. When I was at Winthrop, I was the vice president for university relations, and that included communications and marketing. It also included university events. The idea was that anything that was outward facing at the campus reported through me.
Okay.
So it was important, just as important to me, that local legislators felt good about Winthrop as the young woman who just had her wedding on campus. They both have great experiences, and they both walked away saying good things about Winthrop. I think it's really important that you consider any interaction as an opportunity to create a champion for your institution.
Definitely. I definitely agree with that. I see that. you're new in this role at the South Carolina Commission on Higher Education, and so I'm sure many of your employees, as well as those of us who you'll be leading, want you to talk about your leadership style and how you see your style is, what is your style, and how you think others would describe your style.
I'm a big believer in listening, finding out what your team needs, making sure they have the resources to accomplish what they want, setting clear goals, and then holding them accountable. Not in a gotcha way, because if you don't have goals and means to measure them, then how do you celebrate success? So that's really important to me. I'm a big believer in leading from the front. I think that I'd like to think, you don't know what people say in the coffee room, but yeah, I'd like to think that they say that I work hard. That I might not be as smart as the next guy, but I'm going to work harder than he or she will.
So in this role, it's a really important role, and I was happy when you was interviewed and when you took on the role and accepted, and it was announced that you would come on as the leading in this particular capacity. What do you see some of the priorities and the opportunities for higher education in South Carolina?
Well, I like to talk about the pipeline, the intellectual pipeline here in South Carolina, and that starts with child and pre-K and goes all the way to doctoral programs. CHE has a very important role in a big part of that pipeline in terms of overseeing and collaborating with the campuses, 33 here in South Carolina, public institutions, and then also working with the independent schools as well. Again, I was excited about this job because I have been here for 16 years, and I was familiar with the CHE, and was familiar with some of the challenges they had faced in terms of moving forward, and I really felt a sense of mission that I was in a position to help move the institution forward, and I felt that was really important because really South Carolina can't succeed if the CHE isn't succeeding.
Exactly.
And that's really important to me, to making sure that pipeline is seamless, which is why I'm really excited about the Coordinating Council for Workforce Development that's been in operation for about a year and a half, I guess. I have a seat on that table. I've already had many discussions with staff there about the importance of higher education and how we can effectively integrate our efforts into workforce development and making sure we are a compelling option for companies who want to move here, and that we are recognized for supporting the businesses that already call South Carolina home.
One of the things I recognized when I came, and as I listened to all the conversation and began to visit with people and industry leaders and higher education leaders, is that the talent gap is something that higher education has an important role in helping to fill, particularly in the upstate of South Carolina. That's where I am, where the University of South Carolina Upstate is. And so we convened in October, I think it's October 9th this year. We started last year, the Upstate Talent Forum, where we were bringing industry and higher education and K through 12 leaders together, talking about what are the talent gaps and what do we need to do to fill those particular gaps.
It's so important what you're doing. I think you have to build this kind of effort one community at a time. You build it by community, by region, bringing together businesses and the education servers. It can be K-12, and that's an important. How do we make sure that the transition from K-12 to college is seamless? And that's certainly something we need to focus on.
My passion, too, is how we continue to amplify the importance of a four-year degree, or the importance of a post-secondary education. I often say to folks that it's not AI that's going to take our job. It's those individuals who know how to navigate and to work and utilize artificial intelligence or generative AI.
And you're absolutely right. Sometimes you hear the kind of skills that are imparted by a 4-year degree as being soft skills, but being able to think, communicate, analyze, work with others, have a sense of mission
Right.
and commitment to the community. Those, to me, I don't think those are soft
No,
skills.
not
I
at
call them essential skills.
Not at all. Yeah.
And we won't be successful as a state if we're not providing a steady flow of individuals with those essential skills.
You got to have those essential skills. You got to have that higher order thinking, so that you can meet like a BMW that has invested over $1 billion into the new battery plant and those types of technology. We got to be able to make sure our workforce is ready and able to pivot and to respond to that. So that's where you have that, where all of the whole continuum of education has to be in sync and cooperating. I want to talk a little about what this whole conversation, this podcast is about. It's called Leading Below the Line. And people ask me, Benny, where did you get that title from? Well, it actually came from a concept around conflict management. A friend of mine, previous president, Randy Lowry, talked a lot about conflict and trying to mitigate conflict and work through conflict. And so when I thought about that, I was thinking about leadership. And often leaders are leading below the line. You kind of said, I would like to think in the coffee room with conversations I don't hear. Your team is thinking X, Y, and Z. Well, often leaders don't know what's being said all the time. So how do you lead in that context when you don't know? You have the data, you have the conversations face to face, but there's a lot that's taking place below the line that you don't know anything about. How do you lead?
Well, especially now that I've been here at CHE all of 2 weeks. Again, I've been attending the last 5 years. I've been attending a lot of the CHE meetings, and as much as you think you know an organization, you're on the outside. There is so much that's going on here that I have to learn, and I keep coming back to a line from Walt Whitman that actually was made famous by Ted Lasso, if you've ever seen that show. It's called "Be Curious, Not Judgmental."
Okay.
And that means put your preconceptions aside and be curious. Ask questions. And I think as a leader, it's really important that you have the humility to know that you don't have all the answers, but you have a duty to study hard and ask the right questions. And take the time to listen. It's important that you have a vision.
Yes.
But in terms of trying to achieve that vision, you have to get people excited about what you're trying to accomplish. And they're not going to be accomplished if they don't feel like they're stakeholders. And I think that's where the be curious, not judgmental means that you're asking people how they feel and what's going on. And you learn that way, and then they feel like they're part of the effort.
Okay. So outside of work, how do you spend your time?
Lately, there hasn't been a lot of outside of work. When my wife and I, we like to go for walks, watch a lot of tennis. She and I are both tennis fans. I like old movies and old TV shows. And so I'm a big movie fan, so I love to watch the old shows.
What's the last one you watched that you could recall?
Oh, God. Well, I'll tell you, there's a channel that I get that shows old Westerns.
Okay.
And I just love the old Westerns, not just because they're Westerns, but a lot of them were just 30 minutes long. And the writing on them was so tight to be able to tell a compelling story.
Like Bonanza and those types
Well,
of
Bonanza was now, but like Have Gun Will Travel.
Okay.
Paladin. The Rifleman. Bat Masterson. Wyatt Earp.
You really got them. You got them down to earth, man. But what are some of your hobbies too?
Well, I like to say that I play golf, but I don't play nearly as much as I'd like to. Just spending time too with my wife, and I do like puttering around the house.
Okay.
I really enjoy fixing things when I can.
That's nice. So, do you have a hero?
Sometimes you hear that question. I don't have one hero.
Okay.
If I have to think about it a little bit, I have to call my wife my hero.
Okay.
Because from her, I've learned unconditional love. And trust me, to be married to me for all these years, the love has to be unconditional.
We got to make sure she hears this podcast, okay?
That's right. And personally, my father means a lot to me. He's going to be 90 this September. And
that's an honor.
Growing up, I learned from him patience.
Okay.
I can only aspire to the level of patience I've seen him exercise.
Okay.
Dealing with my brothers and I.
Okay. How many brothers do you have?
Two younger brothers.
Sisters?
No sisters.
No. Okay.
And I'm the oldest.
Okay.
Professionally, I don't know if I'd call him a hero, but I'd sure call him a mentor. When I was at the Citadel, General Rosa, John Rosa, was the president there. Mm-hmm. And I learned so much from him. He's still a good friend. I learned thinking strategically, having a plan, and then how to articulate that plan, to put it into a broader context so that people are excited to participate in that. And then just how to be cool under pressure, and keep your, have the, as they say in the military, situational awareness, know what's going on around you so that you can respond most effectively.
Okay, thank you. One final question, Jeff. Is there a quote or a mantra that resonates with you?
The one that I have a bunch of them, but one that I think about now is, when you get good advice, take it.
Okay.
That's a lot harder to do than it sounds.
Okay.
First you have to figure out what's good advice, and then you have to have the humility when you disagree with it to actually accept it. And that's something that I always talk about with folks. Yeah. When you get good advice, take it.
Thank you. Jeff, thank you so much for spending some time with us. And I'd like to thank you for taking your time to talk with us on Below the Line.
Well, thank you so much, Benny. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
The Below the Line podcast is brought to you by the University of South Carolina Upstate. Look for our monthly write-up in Greenville Business Magazine, and for more information, go to uscupstate.edu.